This is like a two-part presentation. The first part of it is called Legendary Soloists, and it's basically going to go through missing a few people, important people, but trying to get the major players that pretty much have been the main forces in the development of modern Brazilian guitar. And it'll be represented mostly by solo excerpts, both recorded and video. And I have on the screen will be excerpts from some of the pieces that they're playing. So you'll be able to see just how solo guitar texture evolves in all of the different genres and different soloists. I mean, I guess the first place to start is, you know, how did Brazilian guitar get to Brazil? And the thing about the guitar is that it's called violão, V-I-O-L-A with the tilde O. Now, the A-O at the end of certain words means a big version of. And so, if you have viola, the viola is originally an instrument, and I'll show you what the viola caipira looks like. Now that's a 10-string instrument. You can notice that the body is smaller, and it's double string, double course, like a 12-string. This is obviously an industrial version. You can see the electronics on the top. I have another shot, which now that's a bit more artistic, and that's handmade by a very fine luthier. Without going into too much of the tunings, because there are different open tunings depending upon what you're playing, but the viola, whether it is 10-string or 6-string, was principally the instrument that was in Brazil exclusively. It wasn't until the early 19th century that a more full-bodied guitar, like what we're used to, came into being, therefore the violão. And so the other thing that's really important to point out is that nylon or classical strings really did not come onto the scene with any kind of presence until like the mid-1950s or thereabouts, when João Gilberto was pioneering the bossa nova movement. All of the guitarists who thrived and had their most fruitful periods were playing essentially a classical guitar full width fingerboard but with steel strings. So you kind of wonder and say, wow, why steel? Well, in any event, over the decades from the 50s and the 60s, what was happening was that obviously Europe existed. There were people and players going to Europe to get trained in real straight classical, Sor, Giuliani, Tarrega, you know, all of the real standard classical repertoire, and the European conservatories, players and teachers had nylon strings. So that's when it really started to become much more prevalent. But just so you know, when you hear the steel string, you're going to say, well, that doesn't sound like Brazilian guitar. So just a couple of things about, I have like about 4 different biographical sources on my screen at the same time that I'm translating on the fly from Portuguese, because English bios are not that good. So if my English starts to sound a little bit transliterated, it's because I'm translating at sight. So I'm reading from a dissertation from 2003 by a very fine guitarist. His name is Tomás Fontes Saboga Cardoso, and this is like part of his extract, or not extract, but abstract. So he basically says that among like the first is a person by the name of Sarchiro Biliar, and born around 1860, died in 1926, and he was a first-rate instrumentalist, of which Villa-Lobos really exalted as being a very, very important force in the music. He was professor of music, and he definitely used European methods, Sor, Giuliani, and so forth. He was from the state of Pernambuco in the northeast, which is characteristically where frevo, baião, maracatu, and other northeastern genres come from, which we'll cover later. There was and then among his students was a guy by the name of Levino da Conceição, and he turned out to become the teacher of Dilarmando Reis. So there's a lineage. There are a few different lineages of mentoring that happened as early as this, and so I just wanted to just let you know that Brazilian guitar didn't appear out of just nowhere. The instruments were there, the players were there, and certainly the folkloric use of the instrument is very regionalized, and most of it was viola, either 6-string or the viola caipira, which is a 10-string. But the violon, as we know it today, really started to come in at the turn of the century. So the first thing I want to do is turn you on to the player who really lifted the instrument out of what would be known as a second-rate instrument. They used to call it instrumento vagabundo, like a vagabond's instrument, like the funky troubadour. And that is Canhoto. And Canhoto has a very interesting story. Here's a shot of him. He had an older brother who played, and he was fascinated by the instrument. And so he really wanted to play the guitar, but he was left-handed. Canhoto means a left-handed person. His real name is Américo Jacomino. And he was born in the state of São Paulo, I believe in 1889, thereabouts. And the short story, as I've read from a few different sources, is that his brother never would lend him his guitar. He just said, forget it. And also, he says, you're left-handed, so how could you possibly play this thing? Nonetheless, he found a way, like at night, and his father also was dead against him playing guitar. Dead against it, to the point where he would be up in the wee hours of the morning playing really softly in his room so the father and the brother would not find out. So he got a gig as a kid just being a sign painter, just painting signs, and he saved up his money and he bought a guitar. He must have been like 13, 14 years old. And then they just smashed the damn thing. They just smashed his guitar. Well, as resourceful as he was, he put together all the pieces, including new pieces of wood, and then finally decided to become a professional and go through his career. And he really elevated the instrument, not only technically but compositionally, and was really among the first to really, bring a body of repertoire into the music. So I'm going to play. These are original recordings of Canhoto, and if you look on your sheet, you should see Olhos Feiticeiros. Okay, that should be the first track. Yeah.
What dates are we talking about? I don't know if you mentioned. I forgot.
1889 to 1928, thereabouts. He only lived to be 39.
Did he play right?
He played a right-handed guitar lefty.
Oh, he played it upside down.
He played it upside down.
Oh.
So when you hear him, when you hear his vibrato, it kind of recalls Hendrix, right? And so the thing you have to think about is that he's playing the bass lines with these fingers and the melody with his thumb, and index finger. So, but when you listen to it, if you didn't know that, you wouldn't think about it. So this is Olhos Feiticeiros, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go over to this screen and go to, okay, so let's get Canhoto, okay?
And that's like a 19th century guitar.
Yeah, it is. Yep. Até já Canhoto. So, anyway, he was kind of writing in a nationalist style which was extremely fervent, beginning in like the 1860s, including choro, machixe, and then also valses and marches were also part of that, part of what would be considered to be common repertoire. So this is Canhoto's Olhos Feiticeiros, which means sorcerer's eyes. Okay, so here we go. Just get back to the screen here. It has to be his thumb, right? So there's so much music to play. As you see, there's 111 audio examples. So I'd love to play each piece, and then I've got videos as well. You notice the rhythm? That's a very typical rhythm in lots of genres of Brazilian music, but in this particular context, I would kind of call this a choro machixe. It's a kind of a blend of choro, where you have tka-da, right? But you also have tka-da-da-da-da-da, which is pretty much a dead giveaway of a machixe, one of the Afro-Brazilian genres. Now, interestingly enough, Ernesto Nazaré, right around 1899, composed Turuna. And the theme and the bass line is not something that Canhoto invented. As a matter of fact, the resemblance between the two is pretty striking. This is Pichinguinha's orchestra in the 1930s, an arrangement of Turuna by Ernesto Nazaré, the great Brazilian pianist, 1863 to 1936. And you'll see the resemblance. So, there you can see that I'm not saying he got it from there, but it was kind of in the culture, so to speak. Now, the next piece that I want to show you is his march, Marcha dos Marinheiros. Marinheiros are obviously sailors. Around 1925, again, you've got, here we have the bass line set off with voicings. And you notice that you have that little pickup, da-da-da-da, right? The three-note pickup is an earmark trait of choro, melodically speaking, as well as the bass lines, baixarias, which we will get into later. So this is Marcha dos Marinheiros, and there are at least a couple of other interpretations of this that I want to play for you, but this is his original interpretation. So the prioritization of the bass line as a theme is really pretty, you know, fundamentally different than what most classical guitar music was in those days. We're just going to take just a brief break for a moment, just for technical purposes, and then we'll start up again.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
Is this the guy that you said that Villalobos said?
No.
Oh, okay.
No. That was one of the other founding fathers, much earlier.
Okay.
Because Villalobos was, I think, born in the early 1880s.
Okay. Because I was thinking of, you know, the prominence of bass lines, melodies in Villalobos.
Right. Exactly. Absolutely. For sure. Yeah. So this is a three-piece. Marcha dos Marinheiros follows the typical trio form of AA, BBA, CCA, which is the form of waltzes, European waltzes, polkas, schottisches, all of these European dance forms which came into Brazil with the white aristocracy, which eventually blended with Afro-Brazilian rhythms and Afro-Brazilian musicians, many of whom were trained in the basement of churches for free by professors that donated their time. These were called irmandades, or brotherhoods. But this form of AA, BBA, CCA, the three thematic sections, it's a pillar structure within which thematic content is poured, and is the form of most traditional choro. Now this is what became his most famous piece, okay, Abismo de Rosas, right here. It's a waltz, and the two things about him, as you'll see, the little bit of text there underneath the title, his rubato is something that is very important to note, because the use of rubato in waltz phrasing and Brazilian playing of the waltz is extremely important. Like sometimes, and that includes comping too. A lot of times you'll feel like beat 2 comes like sooner than it should, and beat 3 comes later than it should. The other thing is that he's got this very tight vibrato, which was like his signature. So this is Abismo de Rosas, or Abyss of Roses. This is the intro. He's really milking it. Sounds like Don Ho on a good day. But the use of the harmonics is something to be noted. But you notice that once he gets into the accompaniment in bars 5 through 8, it's pretty standard pa, pa. Parallel minor. Pretty soulful playing. Now this is Reminiscencias, which I believe is another waltz. I'll just play a little bit of this. So you hear like the 3 is not like a regular thing at all. And again, very prominent bass line. So again, these are acetates that were remastered, and actually I got these from a radio program by a very fine player and guitar historian in Brazil, Fábio Zanon, and he had O Mundo do Violão, the world of the guitar, and he would feature a different artist, different guitarist / composer in each show, and so I basically got this from the net and clipped it in Audacity and put it together. Now, what I want you to hear is Marco Pereira, who is one of 3 great Brazilian guitarists who are turning 65 this year. There's Genga on June 10th, and then Marco Pereira and Paolo Bellinacci in September. And you're going to hear quite a bit of both of them, because they are kind of like the current guard, the guys that have really honed their craft for decades. So this is Marco Pereira playing his rendition of Manhãs de Sol, or the Mornings of the Sun. So the recording quality will be much better. This is Marco's intro. So, I mean, you notice that the texture is more sinuous In other words, you have more of like an inner line movement for the accompaniment as opposed to like block chords, and that really frees the texture up and moves things forward. And so when we get into the valsa can assume a lot of different types of textural variations.